Welcome to the setup. Today I want to talk about the correct length for your release aid. And most releases are adjustable, so setting that length to fit perfectly for your hand is one of the main things you can do to shoot more accurately, more consistently, and even in some ways to beat target panic. One of the things I'm always trying to accomplish when I'm shooting, whether it's in the yard practicing or shooting at game, is to create a surprise release. And there's a whole philosophy behind the way that you should trigger the shot with a release aid. And if you can anticipate when it's going to go off, when the shot's going to take place, you'll fall into what's called target panic. You'll start to anticipate when the pin gets close. You'll start thinking, okay, now, and then you'll be wanting to trigger the shot. You're trying to time it so that you're there when the pin is on the spot. It's really hard for you to keep the pin in one place on the target, and you start really getting kind of twitchy. That's called target panic. And you really want to avoid that because it takes a lot of the fun out of archery, and it also makes you a lot less accurate. So you want to be able to get to full draw and squeeze off the shot. And it's a lot easier to do that when you can't feel the trigger quite as well within your finger. So I get to full draw, my trigger finger wraps deep around the trigger, and that really kind of desensitizes that finger. I'll show you what I'm talking about on this shot. Okay, now I can reach way around. See, I'm way inside of that first joint on my trigger finger. Now, when I squeeze with my finger, I don't feel that movement near as much as I would if I was out on the end of my finger. Like on the last portion of my finger, there's a lot more dexterity there, a lot more movement. I don't have nearly as much movement on the first, I guess it'd be the second, I don't know what they call those bones, it's between the first joint and the second joint of your index finger. When the trigger hits there and you start squeezing, you really don't feel the trigger nearly as much as you do if you try to trigger it off the very end. So let me shoot another one. So it's gonna be the same thing. And then I'll shoot all three of these, and I'm gonna tell you what I'm doing at each step. And I'm gonna grab those arrows, and I'm gonna put a release on that I've got adjusted that's longer. So it's not, it's not triggering off the very middle of my index finger. It's triggering off the end. Okay, so now I'm just reaching around. I'm at full draw, pin is floating around the spot I want to hit. I can go really deep into that trigger. Now I'm just squeezing with my index finger and pulling. The whole time the pin was just floating around on the spot. So I wasn't trying to time it. I wasn't trying to time the shot. It's a lot easier to do that, like I said, when you desensitize your index finger. So I'm gonna grab those arrows and I'm gonna get my other release, and I'm gonna show you what it looks like if I got the release adjusted too long. Okay, so now I'm just gonna show you where this one sits in my hand. You can see it's really close, really short. I've shortened it to the very shortest post possible. So this is the B3 Archery Hawk. This is the swivel model, is what they call it. They've got a swivel and they've got a flex. And the flex has got a strap instead of a solid, I guess it's probably steel, maybe aluminum, connection between the wrist strap and the release aid, or the release head. So it has, discrete locations where it can be adjusted. And it can't be adjusted super short. So I've got it in the shortest possible setting, which again, if you watch that at full draw, I mean, I can still draw it with my finger behind the trigger, which is what I like to do, just be on the safe side when I'm hunting. I don't like to have my finger in front of the trigger. I see people draw with their finger on top. That just makes me nervous. And I like mine behind. That way I know there's no way this thing's gonna go off before I'm ready. So it's long enough I can stay behind it when I'm drawing it, but it's short enough that I can really wrap my finger once I get to full draw. Okay, deep wrap, squeeze. Okay, now I'm going to switch. I'm going to put the other release on and show you the difference. Okay, so now I've got it's an identical release, except this one is set for, I would say, more typical of where most people would set a release. So I'd be contacting this out more on my index finger. And I'll show you the difference of what that looks like at full draw. Okay, so now I can get into it, I just can't get past that first knuckle. So now I'm squeezing out on the end of the index finger, and you can see I've got a lot more dexterity. Now I've got 2 knuckles worth of movement. I can still squeeze it, but the tendency now is you can feel that movement. I feel more nervous aiming. It just feels like it takes more energy, more force. And it seems more like your finger is sensitive to the movement, to the pressure, whereas if you go into that next bone in from that first joint, that first knuckle, then you don't feel that at all. It really desensitizes the shot. So that's what I would recommend. You know, like my daughter's got a smaller hand than me, so for her, you know, I've got my release set to the very shortest setting. She would have to use the flex model with the strap on it because she could shorten it up even more. So if you have small hands, the flex model with the strap is going to be a lot better because you can bring it in even tighter yet. But you know, I have a normal, probably average size hand. So this one, they call it the swivel. That's just fine for me. But again, most people tend, if you go to the shooting range and watch them, they tend to have their release aids adjusted way too long, and they're way out on the end of the trigger with their index finger. It just makes it, the shot is so much easier to anticipate, so much easier to know when it's going to go off, which is one of the main contributors to target panic. So shoot more accurately, shoot more consistently, enjoy it more, less chance of target panic, and keep that release short.